Hey, good evening, everyone. This is the regular Tuesday Select Board meeting, November 13th, 2018. Our chair, Brian Carpenter, is away, so I get the job of being Master of Ceremonies tonight. And so as we always start our meetings, the first order of business is an approval of the agenda. So is there a motion for that?
Move.
A move? Okay, a motion by Victor, seconded by Fahad. We do have an executive session that's anticipated. I assume that's still true, Kathleen? Mm-hmm. To discuss contracts. Are there any other changes?
No.
Okay, then there are no changes. So all in favor of the agenda as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Next thing we'll do is a motion for the approval of the minutes from our last meeting of October 23rd, which was a regular business meeting. Is there okay, moved by Fahad.
Second.
Seconded by Victor. Are there any changes or corrections we would like to engage?
No, they're good.
Once again, Beth does a fantastic job. So,
Absolutely.
I'm always impressed. Okay, so if we could have a vote, all in favor of the agenda notes for November 13th as written, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, the next thing we have is our citizen comments, and this is for an opportunity for anyone to raise an issue or an item they want to have discussed that's not part of the regular agenda. Are any people for that? Okay, I guess they're all here for a purpose. So we'll move on. The next item is a Middlebury College request for a limited waiver of right of first refusal for the Frog Hollow Mill, which is the old stone mill at 3 Mill Street. And just a little quick summary, as I know we've all looked at this one here, but it's kind of interesting little history to this one. The town, Middlebury, acquired the 3 Mill Street building from Central Vermont Public Service in 1967. And when the town sold the property in 1976, it reserved a right of first refusal. And under the terms of this right of first refusal, before the property can be sold to a third party, it must first be offered to the town at the same price and the same terms as the proposed third-party sale. It has been turned hands multiple times since that 1976 date. If the Select Board wishes to proceed with the purchase and exercise that approval, it must first notify the current owner of the property and then hold a town meeting within 60 days, at which time the voters will have the final say as to whether to purchase the property. So the property currently is owned by the college, and they're proposing to sell the property to Community Barn Ventures, LLC, for the sum of $500,000. This gives us a couple of choices. We can vote to accept the purchase, in which case the town meeting, we would actually look to acquire the property, which means we have 60 days to have a meeting and then come up with the money for $500,000, or we can waive the right of first refusal and let the sale proceed on. So any discussion, any thoughts on that? I kind of think I know the answer to this one, but nonetheless.
Well, I think we should proceed. I think they have a good plan for the building,
Yes.
from what I've
Yes, I think
been able to
it's a
discern.
promising change, and
Very exciting plan.
I understand the buyers are thinking of restoring a restaurant also, and so, no, I would move that we authorize Kathleen to sign the limited waiver. Is that right? Of the right of first refusal in regard to the proposed sale of Frog Hollow Mill to Community Barn Ventures, LLC.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Victor, seconded by Heather. Any
Quick question.
Yes.
Does the limited waiver still give us first right refusal in the future?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and so we have 6 in favor and 1 absent. All right, our next thing is we have Amy Ryan of our Neighbors Together and Karen DeGay of the Better Middlebury Partnership with an update on the V-Trans Downtown Bridge and Rail Project Marketing Program and the Middlebury Rewards program. So,
Do
welcome.
you want to start?
Yeah. Poor Karen's sick, so she's going to save her voice. So what we're really here to ask for is a reallocation of the mid-money match funds. You might remember, Karen will go into greater detail with the slideshow, but we had a rewards program set out that's turned out to be a little bit more confusing and less manageable logistics-wise. And we'd like the select board to give the Neighbors Together group excuse me, the latitude to alter the program somewhat so that it makes more sense, so that we can infuse the money into the community so that it can be spent at our Middlebury merchants during
Yeah.
Very Merry Middlebury.
Right. So Kathleen, if you want to run back up a little bit. So basically, just one more down. So just a quick overview. The mid-money match program was the card, had 10 open spaces on it. You go into a participating merchant and spend at least $10. You'd get a sticker or stamp or initials. And then when all 10 spaces are filled in, you turn it in for $10 in Middlebury money. We launched the program in August. We were able to distribute cards and promotional materials to 165 local businesses. We had allocated $20,000 in rewards for the program. And if you'll recall, when we first came to you, we were not able to find any national models for a town-wide reward program. So this was an instance where we were a little bit reinventing the wheel and kind of making it up as we went and to see what would work. And at the time, I remember saying to you that, we were going to basically, one of the measurements of success for this was to do it and know if it worked or not. And so, not necessarily that it worked would be a measurement of success, but that, in trying it would be a measurement of knowing where to allocate future funds. So if you want to keep going. Okay. So the benefits here of this program were we were able to promote the development of a townwide business database with contact information for all those businesses. That was done through the outreach here, which we hadn't had before. We grew the Middlebury Money program as part of this to nearly 100% of Middlebury businesses, which is the first time that's ever happened since I've been in the BMP. And that's really great because that's been on my sort of, goals to do for a long time. And then we did see a lot of businesses that did embrace the program and they definitely saw it as supportive. But then also we got some other feedback. And so that included lack of communication, as I mentioned at one point, coming back for an update with you guys, between managers and owners who we were emailing and talking to at that level, and then people that are at registers being presented with a card, not necessarily having the information about what to do with it, people having stickers, throwing them away, not realizing what it was. It just needed a lot more communication at the point of sale. And it needed more promotion, which is something that I actively chose not to do until I was sort of waiting for the program to solidify from the merchant standpoint before I invested money into promoting it. And so I can definitely point to that as one of the reasons that the program's been less than successful. But again, that was the decision. The structure, we did get feedback that it was confusing. It was definitely easy to lose your card and need to start over again. People said they'd prefer an app or some other online process. We found it was difficult to sort of maintain the communication with businesses when businesses ran out of things, getting volunteers to distribute material, et cetera. And we got really hung up on the idea of fraud, sort of mistakenly. We really sort of structured this program really concerned about the idea of fraudulent cards, and then realized halfway through that it didn't matter really for the amount of risk that had. It was still the worst case scenario was more Middlebury money out in the community, but we hadn't quite gotten to that point in the beginning of setting it up, and then also a lack of urgency to spend the money because it sort of was like, there wasn't really any timeline. You have to do it by this day. We didn't set it up like that. And so there just wasn't that sense of urgency to get your rewards. And then we also heard a little bit that the rewards of $10 on $100 was just not enough to encourage local spending. So you want to keep going? So here's what we're proposing. We would like to end the program on November 30th, and that means that cards need to be redeemed by the 30th.
The original mid-money match.
Yep. So we would promote the end date with Front Porch Forum, social media, website, 10 cards at the teller line, and advertising in the paper, as well as an email to all the businesses with the information. And then we'd like for you to consider repurposing those unused funds that were previously allocated towards this reward shopping, basically to other reward shopping that's geared toward promoting local investment. And we'll go into detail about that. And I just wanted to mention that the reason for the tight turnaround here is because we realized as we got this information and we were really kind of debating what to do as the Neighbors Together group, we had the idea to use it during Midnight Stroll when there's a mass amount of people down here. And if we don't redeem the cards by the 30th, then we won't know how much money will need to go out as those rewards, so that we don't want to double dip, basically.
Or overextend.
Or overextend.
Yeah.
So I'm estimating right now that about 10, I believe, and this is a total estimate on my part, I believe we're probably going to have about $18,000 left of the $20,000 allotment. So I'd like to propose that about $10,000, and this is very tentative based on what those redeem, exactly what actually happens. But I'd like to propose that if we had it, the $10,000 would be spent in giveaways of mid-money during the midnight strolls, and then we would do that in a variety of ways, including something like we're sort of still as Neighbors Together. Even last night we were debating different ideas of how to inspire urgency and fun and excitement. This sense that I think downtown really could use that right now. They could really use a little bit of a boost of excitement. So we were looking at giveaways of maybe $10 in mid-money to the first 50 people who come in showing they've spent $50, maybe giveaways at the teller, at actual customer, the register experience. We were talking about, we also are working with a partnership with WVTK and doing 2 live remotes those 2 nights and doing some giveaways associated with the radio station as well.
Can I jump in for just
Yep.
a second? As Karen mentioned, having these giveaways and sort of this infusion of Middlebury money during the 2 midnight strolls, it reinforces the idea that the Middlebury money can be spent anywhere in Middlebury. So while the proposal is to do it during those downtown events, the hope is that if those rewards are redeemed, they can be redeemed anywhere in Middlebury, not just at other downtown stores.
And then if there's money in addition to that, which right now I'm estimating about $8,000, I would like to, if you'll recall, we had 2 advertising campaigns in the original budget. One was a local impact campaign and one was a promoting Middlebury campaign. I have been chatting with some folks who do this kind of work for a living, like professional graphic designers, and getting a sense of exactly what these campaigns should cost, and getting I got an estimate from one. I'll need to get estimates for the others to follow the purchasing policy. But I believe we're going to need to allocate some more money to the advertising campaigns in order to really make them more effective. And so I'm proposing that we would do that with the remaining dollars. And if you, so Kathleen was asked me to add these 2 slides. So these are both new that were not in your packet. So this just goes into a little bit more detail about those 2 campaigns. So the local impact, really geared towards supporting local businesses. I'm very committed to making this a guilt-free. I don't want the guilt-based campaign. I really want this a celebration of what's here. The concept is sort of like connecting to what's real, this idea of establishing local connections and prioritizing experience and community. And the concept in ad design, I would really like to see professionally done, because I think that's going to get us the most sort of impact there. And it would include digital, print, and radio. Currently allocated is $6,500. I'm recommending a $4,000 increase if that money were to be available, for a total of $10,500 to that local impact campaign. And just to note, the digital would be social media, the print would be Addison Independent, and the radio would be WVTK. And then the promoting Middlebury, this would be a campaign to a regional audience in New England, which would be meant to attract tourism based on 4 assets that we've identified: winter outdoor rec, arts and culture, summer outdoor rec, and local food and beverage, which would include the tasting trail. The concept and design would be also professionally done. The advertising would include highly targeted digital and print media. I would be looking to that graphic design company for some suggestions as to how to find those most highly targeted mediums there. And then they would include, if you'll recall, we talked about doing a brochure as part of this campaign as well. And in light of the number of turnover in businesses and things like that, I think it makes a lot more sense at this point to do a rack card for each one of those assets, which really aren't going to change. And that those rack cards would be distributed to the welcome centers through PP&D distribution, so throughout the state. So at this point, we've allocated $9,500 for the campaign and brochure, and I'm recommending, if we had it, to pull $4,000 in for a total of $13,500.
Very good.
Questions?
Thank you. Questions of Karen or Amy?
So the first $10, the first 50 people, you're gonna give them $10 apiece, right?
That's what we're thinking. Yep.
That's about $500, so you still have like
A lot.
$10,000.
Yep.
So how, is there any specifics how you're gonna plan to spend that?
Yeah,
on that
so
day?
we've noodled around some ideas. So one of the ideas that we had talked about was the idea of giving merchants envelopes with times written on them, and the idea being like that time, whoever's at their counter, they hand them, and it might be $5 in Middlebury money, it might be $50 in Middlebury money, something like that. So that's an idea. We haven't really landed on anything
No,
yet.
and I'll say that those ideas and the benefit to that specific idea is that it covers all spending classes. So whether somebody's spending $3.50 on chapstick or $150 on a backpack, everybody has the same chance at a reward that is unknown. It's a little bit of a surprise, again, bringing that excitement and energy to something that will hopefully be a draw to people to actually go out and spend some. They have
Yep.
to spend something because they have to be at the register.
Right.
But
We also talked about the idea of raffles, and the really nice thing about raffles is that you can track it. So tracking the spending for Midnight Stroll is something that we really want to try to do this year for the 2 Midnight Strolls. So there are 2, December 6th and the 13th, for the first time. And so, I think it's whatever ways we can try to create that sense of excitement, but also try to get some real data about spending is what we're going to try to do.
So, but you know, dollar amount, how much you are allocating to these envelopes?
So for right now, what we're looking at is $5,000 for each of the nights, split up between a combination of raffles, giveaways, and VTK promotion. So it would be $5,000 each one of the nights in the way that makes the most sense for
and
each one of
probably
those
in
nights.
$10 increments because that's
Right.
the denominations
Yes,
of
that we have.
Middlebury money. So the
Yep.
minimum, like if you were in that scenario,
Yes, you're right.
the minimum you'd get at a register is $10.
Good. Other questions? Laura, did you have one?
Yeah, it's just back to the mid-money match program. So I found that I didn't know which businesses were participating in that. So I went to the National Bank of Middlebury and I said, do you have a list? And they gave me this Middlebury money list. I was like, are you sure they're
Not quite
all
the
on
same.
it?" No, I don't think so, so I
Yeah.
said, I think.
Right.
So how
Yeah.
does somebody find out who? has
Right.
The
So-
program.
right.
Is it on the
Excuse me.
website? Or?
No. So it was.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
go
want to
ahead.
clarify. Is your question, how do you find out who accepts Middlebury money?
No.
Or
Who's
is
giving
through
it?
the Middlebury-
Who's giving the
Oh.
stamps?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So it actually it was everyone. So everyone should have been doing it.
Oh, really?
Yes. However, everyone that you could go up to the register should have been doing it based on our data in our outreach. However, this was
They
part of the
didn't.
problem. They
Right.
didn't, or
This is
somebody.
the communication breakdown
Right.
problem where
Right.
the direct contact might be the business owner.
I
Yeah.
know.
Perhaps it's the
I
manager,
don't think it
perhaps
was
it's.
more of I think it was more of a difficulty managing that part with
Sure.
employees.
Yeah.
It's not the communication because no matter how much I communicate with my employees, it was very hard to explain to them.
Right.
Right.
But to clarify,
Oh.
every business was given a poster to hang
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
on the door or on the
Okay.
wooden board or whatnot,
Mhm.
and we were giving those cards
Right.
with stickers and stuff to do. But it was very hard to manage.
Yeah.
And then
if I
as
was
the-
at the cash register, it was very easy for me, and I gave out quite a few.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't know to ask, then you.
Well, and that
you
was
know.
the thing.
Or like I carried it around in my purse for 3
I
months.
did.
I mean, I
Right.
should have 10 of those cards filled.
too,
I
right.
kept forgetting
So,
about them.
the intention was really to try to get, so kind of like Shaw's, right? When you go to Shaw's and they ask you, are you collecting stamps?
Right,
It's
yeah,
like,
I know.
it's like the every single point of sale,
Right.
it's a reminder, and that's what we were trying to get to. And it was clear after a while that we were not gonna get to that.
Right.
And it just was gonna take way more time, and then,
Got that, so like, given where we are now, if
Yep.
somebody wants to finish their card
Yes.
now, by November 30th, how do they find out which businesses are in the game?
right, so it should be all of them.
What-
It should be
what is
any business that you would go to buy something.
Shaw's?
Not Shaw's, Hannaford, or the co-op. So any business that's not a food, a grocery store.
So we had like 140 businesses or something,
165.
165 businesses.
So let's say they don't have a sticker, then they could just make it.
They just
They can
initial.
Initial.
Yeah, they can just initial.
Which
So
we've-
fill it up, turn it in.
Okay, everybody hear that?
Yes.
I have a thought. Instead of doing $50 and $10, or
Yep.
spend $50 for the first
Yep.
50 people, did you consider doing the first 100 people $25?
We could do that. There's
Because
no.
I think that would get more
more
individual
people.
people downtown. and
Yeah,
I-
and so the other thing that we're working on is a pop-up space possibly taking place in the Clay's empty space. And that's where this would be. And the radio station will be set up there as well. So the more people in, the better. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is
We're
all
open
coming
to
together.
ideas,
Oh,
yeah.
this
Yeah,
all,
I
yeah,
feel-
exactly. And I think those ideas are great. So I
it
would
coming.
totally
Yeah.
consider that.
Another
And we will
clarif-
advertise the end date of November
Yes.
30th so that people have ample time, like, that will, as soon as we can get that in, people have ample time to redeem them and turn
Yeah.
them in.
And just to another clarification that you said yesterday, that it's only downtown specific.
For
so
Midnight Stroll.
Only 14 businesses participating, is that what you said?
For the Midnight Stroll. If we were to give, so I think the reason that I want to do it during Midnight Stroll, even though that is a downtown specific event, is because so many people come from outside of the downtown to it, especially given the 2 nights, and that they then, as Amy mentioned, can spend it anywhere in Middlebury. So we take advantage of a mass amount of people to distribute the rewards, and then the impact is actually felt throughout town. So that's the intention
I'm
behind it.
hoping, yeah, that's one.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions?
Because we are putting a lot of money.
You can
in this
highlight
Right, exactly.
store on there.
I know, yeah, we'll circle it on a map.
Good, good.
Okay, so I think we're looking to have the approval of that
Trade,
reallocation.
yeah. I mean, is anything specific or, yeah?
Well, I saw a piece about Exchange Street, a marketing piece about Exchange Street. I just wondered, how that was fitting into your marketing plan too. And where did that come from, that yellow brochure that you see?
It was
Do you
it
know
the
what I'm
map?
talking about?
The
Yeah,
map with the car drawing. Yep, a citizen did it on his own.
Okay.
And he, Doug Lazarus, and he went to he did approach us for some funding. We weren't able to fund it at the time, but a couple of Exchange Street businesses did. And he was able to get it printed that way.
That's what happened, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
that's what it was.
Well, as you mentioned in the beginning, there was no model for this, so you had to create it. So to me, it's a success that, we tried something and we're moving forward. And I think one of the valuable things that we'd like to be able to contribute at the end of this whole project, because this is such a major project and there's other towns in Vermont will be encountering it, is the lessons learned.
Right.
Some kind of model.
Yeah.
I applaud the work and look forward to continuing on. One thing I would say, in addition to targeting in New England, again, don't forget our neighbors up to the north.
Yes. And I wanted to mention to you, we are working on getting that website translated.
C'est bon.
So-
Good. Okay, so then we've heard the presentation. Are there any motions anybody would like to
I'll
make?
make a motion.
Okay,
To end the Middlebury Money Reward Program and redeem all outstanding cash by November 30th. You want two different?
we'll do more. Okay, so second. So then, all in favor of the motion made by Fahad, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
I'll also move to approve the reallocation of remaining Middlebury Money Rewards Program funds as proposed in the alternative local shopping rewards program in December.
Second.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded again. All in favor signify by, of
Sorry, can I just make a quick comment?
course you can.
Do we have to, so is the do we have to include a piece about the advertising in there, or
I
is it?
didn't know if you want to do that as a separate motion, or you could add it to this one.
We can do it as separate.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then this third motion?
I'll make a motion to allocate any remaining funds estimated around 8,000 to the advertising campaign as proposed in the presentation.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Okay, Fahad second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all three motions pass by 6 in favor and 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will try to get back in front of you with a wrap-up for the year, and a proposed budget for next year as soon as it makes sense.
And just to emphasize again, these midnight strolls are December 6th and 13th.
Yes, and I will be sending a sign-up sheet around for volunteers for Very Merry Middlebury.
I know you will.
If you can forward it to your contacts, I would really appreciate it. We
Great,
need all
now,
hands on deck.
thanks
Thank you.
both,
Thanks,
and
guys.
Karen, go home and get feel better. Okay, next thing is Jim Gish, along with Eric Hamlin from VHB to discuss. Or Mark, yeah, the other Eric, Mark Hamlin, to discuss the downtown Triangle Park plan. We have a couple of concepts have been developed, and there's a bit of a sense of urgency because there's a large amount of utility work that is involved, and the engineering has to proceed so that we can maintain the schedule for the next year. So, Jim, Mark?
Good. Thank you, Nick. Everyone, good to see you all again. So accompanying me on the right, as Nick mentioned, is Mark Hamlin. Mark is the Director of Land Planning and Landscape Architecture for VHB. And Mark has been asked to complete the design concepts that were first developed by Landworks earlier this year for Triangle Park and Printers Alley. Mark has a stellar resume. He's previously designed Burlington's waterfront park, as well as the Waterbury State Office Complex. So he comes to us, to this project with a lot of experience designing large-scale projects in downtowns in Vermont. Tonight, Mark will briefly present you with revised design concepts for Triangle Park and Printers Alley that reflect his understanding of the community feedback that came out of our last public meeting, which was in September. I thought I would just briefly, before Mark presents his ideas here, set the stage, a little bit of context here for where we've been and where we are right now. The state is required by the National Environmental Policy Act to restore our green spaces that have been impacted by the project to their pre-construction condition. So in the case of Triangle Park, that's fairly straightforward, at least in the lower half of the park, though we now have a tunnel that's brand new, reconnecting the village town green to Triangle Park, so that's a new space to be designed. Over in Printers Alley, we certainly don't want concrete foundations restored as the construction condition there. So with that in mind, the state came to the town earlier this year and said that the state would be willing to invest in developing a landscape design for these two areas, with the idea that it would provide the town with the basic canvas that the town could then embellish how and when it saw fit. That was kind of the operating principle here. VHB hired Landworks, the Middlebury company, to manage the process of gathering public input and also to develop the design concepts. The process first got underway in June with a public meeting, and then other commitments and priorities emerged so that the first round of design was not presented until mid-September. Those designs were not well received by several of the folks who attended the public meeting in September. There were about 30 people from the community there. And so that sent VHB back to the drawing board. This was a mid-September public meeting. So here we are in November, and the state is growing anxious about completing the final plans, as Nick mentioned, for the project, which gets underway, the full project next year, Triangle Park and Printer's Alley represent a particular concern because of the amount of new utilities that are underground there. We're looking at the overground, but underground, in addition to the drainage system, there are underground electric and telecom lines, new sewer lines, new water lines. There's a lot of things that have to be finalized in order for the project to move forward. And that really plays into the state's request that we fast-track the decision now on how the select board, the town would like to move forward with the design of these two spaces. Any questions about kind of the background and kind of where we are here before Mark presents his ideas? Then let me turn that directly over to Mark.
Okay, as Jim said, I'm Mark Hamlin, Director of Land Planning Landscape Architecture at VHB. A little further background, I'm a Vermont native. I attended the University of Vermont in the School of Natural Resources. Immediately following the Harvard Graduate School of Design for Landscape Architecture with a master's degree. I worked for 5 years out of San Francisco on large master planning projects before returning to Vermont. And I've been really fortunate to have been able to work on some of the more significant built projects in the state in the last 30 years. And as he mentioned, Burlington's Waterfront Park, the recently completed state office complex in Waterbury, Burlington's Airport, the Fletcher Island Renaissance project at the hospital. And I realized this project, the importance of this project to Middlebury. So I feel pretty honored to get a crack at pulling this together for you guys. And, you know, it's late in the game. It's gone on. This thing's gone on for a long time. I really want to wrap this up and get you guys a park that's going to stand the test of time, and you're all going to be proud of it. It's really quite a fortunate thing for me to be able to work on this. Now, to get prepared for this, what I went through is I went through every piece of trace that's been developed so far on this project. I read the initial comments off all the public meetings and the firsthand right off the sheets. People did it. I spoke to the people who were at those meetings. What I came up with is several key design considerations as I went about trying to sketch these out. I mean, the first one, people stressed the flexibility of use as a public gathering space and plaza. There were comments that there really wasn't enough plaza involved in it, a little more flexibility of usage so it could accommodate small gatherings or large gatherings, you know, with ease. The connectivity to both the Riverfront Park and Marlboro Works, connectivity to the existing green, the inclusion of the historic fountain, and we'll be speaking tomorrow with the V-Trans's historic preservation officer, and the integration of a church memorial garden concept at St. Stephen's. So those are like my starting things as I looked at this. And then I came out and I walked around this site, and I get most of my ideas from just looking firsthand at a project site and trying to envision what's going to go on there. So I came up with two slightly different versions. Some of the bones are the same, but in the first one here, you guys see this? Here's Main Street coming through here. This is Merchants Row. There's St. Stephen's.
That's all right. I can
Post
see.
office. Right here is that
Yeah,
railroad
yeah.
tunnel. It comes right under the park. So there'll be a concrete lid put over the whole thing, and roughly about a foot of dirt covers that over. Really, in terms of grading the park, it's all just a simple plane sloping at 3% towards the street like this, so it can be used in any way you want to use it. There's no grade changes, there's no ADA problems. In this scheme here, if you look at study urban parks, a lot of the real action occurs at the edges. It's the same with swimming pools. Everybody's at the edges, they aren't out in the middle. It's comfortable for humans to have an edge condition. So what I've done in this scheme is I've reinforced the streetscape edges, walk, hardscape areas, large canopy street trees, and then the use of those historic ashlar blocks as benches to protect the trees and provide seating. The fountain has been moved forward, so it's a focal point right on as soon as you look into the park. I think this is also suggesting the use of movable tables in that space. A lot of the parks in Boston, in Philadelphia have all moved to this, and they found that people really aren't stealing them, that they like them, they can move them around as they like. You know, you might chain them up at night if you have to. That seems that. There's an arcing path, comes through here, then another one here, then it connects over to the green. These trees here, if you notice, like on downtown Church Street, the restaurants that do well are down near Luning's, because they have a mature street tree canopy. Humans feel comfortable with that human scale it provides, and the shade it gives in the summer. You go up the street where the trees aren't present, and the restaurants are like vacant tables out there. And there's nothing they can do to bring them around. It's that real tree canopy on the edge. In this scheme here, these are shown as like a smaller, more like an apple type flowering tree. Keep it low. That way, anywhere you're in the park, you look over these, and then the stone architecture of the church provides that spatial backdrop on the park itself. If you come down to Printer's Alley, this was seen as a real transit corridor to get to the Riverside Park and to the Marble Works. So we brought a crosswalk across here. There's a simple path that comes down and connects right there over the park. There's two like seating areas within this. There's a lawn area here. It's using the blocks as a seat wall. And then there's a circular hardscape one down here with the blocks again. Trees and shrubs form the backdrop for it. And the intent there is that it's just, you can see visibly into that park from any angle. There's no security concerns. It's just a very pleasant place to pass through or hang out in. This would be concept day.
I hope. Oh,
Okay,
there it
this
is.
version here, a lot of the streetscape edge is handled the same, except we've expanded. There was some discussion over having a much more larger plaza space. So in this one, the fountain is centered on a larger hardscape area. And then in this area, it's still the open lawn with an arcing row of those stones. It's still just a smooth grade. It can be used in multiple ways. My opinion on this one, it's a little large for the plaza, but we want to show an alternative. I think the first one, if there was only a few people, like all you guys in this room, you'd feel real comfortable in it. This one, you might feel a little lost. We simplified this over here. The Printer's Alley one, it's still the path to one gathering area. We brought the trees around through here and brought you away from the tunnel itself. I think either one, you could be interchangeable. I wouldn't show you one I wouldn't want to build.
Good. Thank you. So what we have here is, Mark's presented a couple of interesting ideas, and I realize we're all getting this last minute, so it seems that what might be best is, see if there's any brief comments any of us have right now on this, but to take these ideas, and I've had this conversation with Brian as well, take these ideas, and then in a couple of weeks, after we digest them, we can have a more in-depth discussion, and also anybody who wishes to contribute from the public to be in there. Well, we could also, during this time, for the next couple of weeks, and I realize, again, we're putting pressure on them, and it's a little tight, but we could have the Planning Commission and Design Advisory Committee review and comment as well, so that ideally in 2 weeks, we have had a discussion and a direction to go forward, similar to what we had with Merchants Row. And then any revisions could be made in time for the December 11th meeting, so that we hopefully could approve it by then. I realize that it would be requesting Kathleen to ask V-Trans on the board's behalf for an extension of 2 weeks, but I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. And as Mark says, it's creating a basic canvas that we can have right now. Certainly, as I look at that, it's an improvement over what was there before. And then in the future, as the master plan is developed, there may be additional things we want, but that could be addressed at that point. So I'll ask my board members, do we have any initial comments and thoughts? Heather?
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
So first thing, with only a foot of dirt over that tunnel, are those trees? I'm
No,
gonna
the
serve.
trees are all in back of it. It comes
Yeah, so
right
there's
through
no dirt
here.
there.
Oh, okay,
So it's just a lawn scenario.
okay. So I was, okay. I just didn't wanna plant a bunch of stuff that wasn't coming.
Yeah, and there's none of the big stone blocks are over it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
And then just one other, so I'm still, in what I read, still not sure what the state's covering as part of the project and what the town needs to cover. Is everything you're presenting covered as part of the project? Or is some of what you're presenting going to be town costs?
Jim, do you know that one?
Yeah, I don't know the definitive answer to that. I would suspect that the state is going to be willing to cover most, if not all, of what you're looking at tonight. But particularly with the hardscape, the materials haven't been identified that would consist of the hardscape yet. So that might impact the state's cost. But I think by the 27th, we could have an answer to that, if not before.
I mean, one thing I like to do in the design of this is you can see there's zones of different materials by the different colors and textures. So you can change materials to make it work, and the design still holds together. It doesn't like start over. It's just a matter of balancing it. What's wanted.
So the only thing I'm thinking is if, you know, if one or other of the designs had more or less town costs, or, you know, having that information to be able to make an informed decision would be helpful.
Yep.
I would
Or
agree with that.
if somebody had an idea for something additional, or I don't know, I don't know what it is right now, but having a clear idea that if we wanted to do that, it would be on our cost, or, you know. Okay.
Good point. Fahad?
Just a couple of questions. I don't know you or you can answer this. One is about the fountain. What is the significance of that? You say it's historic, but I've heard that it's a replica of the original fountain. Can you clear that up? The second is, we originally had scheduled 3 public meetings, right? And we managed to do only 2. Could we not have accommodated a third one even after the September one, if we wanted to? Because we, the locals, from the other side, what I hear is they want an input, the public input. They want to be valued, because we are the one who's gonna live here, and we want the Triangle Park to our liking, is what they're saying. So could we not have accommodated a third one if you wanted to, or?
Well, it seems to me the third one could be our 27th meeting, because that's going to be a chance for us all to have a discussion, both as a board and members of the public. And could you be here?
Yes.
Okay, so then could respond to various issues as is. Because part of it is just, and I hear what you're saying, but part of it is also this timeline, this imperativeness to keep the project moving. And we need to make sure that we're not doing anything to hold it up, because it's a pretty tight one.
I'd like to follow up on Heather's question. I'm a little concerned. As I understand, the town is contributing $500,000 for the tunnel, and that,
No.
No.
what?
The Secretary of Transportation, Joe Flynn, at the end of last year, forgave the town the $500,000
right.
contribution.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to hear that. And I feel richer all of a sudden. But I guess the other question nonetheless is that, and I'm not saying, well, now you've given us something, I want more, but I'm a little surprised by your answer that these designs you're proposing are not going to be covered by the state and federal grant that's going to be paying for this.
Well, let me clarify that, Victor. My expectation is that what you're looking at here will be paid for by the state, but I don't speak on behalf of the state, and these designs are new.
No, I
And so-
realize that, and I'm not asking you to pretend you have authority that you don't.
Right.
I'm simply concerned with the fact that obviously these designs don't look as though we're proposing, say, gold-plated benches or something like that. I mean, we're asking what seems to me the materials and that are normally used in these kinds of things, and therefore I would be concerned that somehow to discover as we're going on, well, here's this design, we all like it, but it's going to cost the taxpayers something in addition. And I would like that clarified at our next, I'm not asking for you to clarify it now, but if there are any collateral expenses that would fall to the town, I would want that specified before we make a decision. I think that's a very important issue.
Sure,
It is.
agreed.
It's all important part of the discussion. and
Yeah,
it's
okay.
well taken and
All right.
and valid points that each of you make.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Farhad, if I'd come back to Farhad's first question about the fountain. Mark is meeting tomorrow with Judith Ehrlich, who attended our September meeting, who is V-Trans's Historic Preservation Officer. My understanding is that her initial ruling was that the fountain does constitute an historic resource, even if it was a replica,
Yep.
and that it would remain in place, but Mark will get clarity on that tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
That'll help, yeah.
Any other comments or questions at this point?
I'm just wondering, can we keep the visuals until our next meeting so people can look at them?
I was going to put them up in the, I'll work with Kathleen on this, but
Yeah.
have them available
Keep
for
them
public
more.
display.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it would be, is it possible to also get these maybe into the newspaper?
Yes, I talked to John about that. Mhm.
Let me see, is John here? Oh, John is here. Possible. Thank you. I guess one thing, Kathleen, I guess maybe it's for Bill, is if there's any maintenance issues that would be associated with these, because they're going to have that job. Yes, Laura?
So you said that it's ADA
This one right here is the Village Green one.
sensitive.
is. Over under Printer's Alley, that's a 10% slope.
Right, that's
and-
what I was, yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
So we talked at some of those meetings about how do we navigate that so that it is ADA accessible at Printers Alley?
yeah,
No?
it's a little tough.
Tough.
If you want
So
to
we-
stay simple, unless you want to start switchbacking ramps and,
Right. Okay. I like the connectivity, I just remember that, and I like the maximization of plaza space at Triangle Park. So I think that's been accomplished.
Okay, well, I think we have a good starting ground, and do appreciate the effort. Thank you. I'm glad you came and presented it, because it helped understand a lot of the philosophy. Okay, we'll take a couple of quick questions, but we're in the interest of moving along and having more discussion next time. Please.
Thank you. I'm Chris Hammond with the Betterment.
Would you come on up to the microphone, because in TV land, they want to hear you.
You could come over here.
Yeah.
Obviously, we understand the sensitivities in terms of time and things like that, and the plan looks better than maybe we anticipated, and I think there's certain things that are workable there. I guess I would also just plant a seed. There's a design program with an organization called Come Alive Outside. This is a student-led program where they get a bunch of university students come in, learn about the environment. And so as we look towards our master plan, I guess just to,
Good point.
as a low-cost, yet also kind of exciting way to engage the community in something like that, and where we want to go with all our green spaces, not necessarily these. And then I would stress once again, it'd be nice to have that third public review in some form, whether or not that's via the paper we get it out, or people can come see it in the lobby or however, but I think this is a pretty big decision. You know, when the dust clears on this big project, there's only a few tangible benefits to the town that people can see. You know, the bridges are bridges. Obviously, the train service is going to be great, but this is one that we're going to see and walk by and drive by every single day. So I'd like to make sure we get it right and we get input.
Name of that organization, Chris?
I'm with the Better Middlebury
No,
Partnership.
the one.
Oh, that's, so Come Alive Outside is a national landscape nonprofit.
Okay,
And that challenge is called the Design Challenge.
good, thank you.
So
Okay.
it's not the same as the organization that comes in to bring people outside?
It is the same, yes. It's a multifaceted
That-
group.
That
Yeah.
came to our event?
Yeah.
That put the sod down?
Good.
And the folks that brought it up at our board meeting were bringing it up in the context of how we could connect Triangle Park to the green and how we could make the green itself. How do we take this as an opportunity of actually creating a green that maybe is more usable, because it isn't really all that usable with the slope that it is currently. And so how do we incorporate something that the state is giving us as part of this project with something that's really exciting? We could actually turn this whole space into more of an economic driver for the community and just more of a space that can be used.
Good, thank you, Chris. Was there another comment, just briefly? Come up to the mic.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Dave Honshaw, 53 Seymour Street. So I'm an urban designer and a public consultation specialist.
Right.
I've done that kind of work and this
Speak in
kind of work.
the
Sorry, am I not close enough?
hear you, yeah.
I'm not that good at speaking to microphones. I've done a lot of this kind of work, and I just want to say, I think the idea of designing something that could be a platform for the public to then further embellish in the future, knowing our timelines, is a good one. And I just have a couple of comments, or I don't know if these are going to be questions or comments or requests. So I'm going to just say a couple things, see how they come out. One is, whatever the final design looks like, I'd love to know that it doesn't constrain our opportunities to improve it in the future. So whether there's hardscape or softscape, and how that impacts the substructure or the utilities running underneath, things like that. I would love to know that we've got a ton of flexibility in what we might do with that space in the future. My other comment, and this is more specifically to now in the next 2 weeks, is that it's really hard. Like, if you think of a park as a stage, you don't design a stage set without knowing what the play is going to be. And I'd love to know that you all have plans to consult with potential organizational users of that space, like the Farmers Market, Middlebury Underground, Better Middlebury Partnership, rather than just putting it out to a public meeting in 2 weeks during a formal hearing. I'd love to know that there was going to be more direct outreach to organizations like that before a decision is made.
Again, I think the situation we're faced with, and both are very valid points, but we're under a time deadline. And so it may be the matter of, and we are looking at pursuing a master plan for the downtown that is in the works, that we get this good, as was described as a canvas. The point of flexibility is very well taken, and that's something that in the future we can, once the master plan is being developed, we can look at the big picture. So those comments will not be lost. But again, there's a bit of a sense of urgency that we have right now because we have to move this thing forward. So
I think those are a lot of the things I'm trying to achieve in this thing, to make sure that it is flexible, it can be adapted. There's not a lot of goo-gaw or metaphors for this, that, or the other thing. It's just simple and elegant and can stand the test of time and be used as need be.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate the thoughts. So now what we have is basically we're looking for two motions if we agree with it. And this came in today's packet more recently from Kathleen. And one is to refer this visual landscape design concepts for Triangle Park and Printers Alley to the Planning Commission and Design Advisory Committee for their review and comment. And secondarily, to request that our town manager, Kathleen Ramsey, contact V-Trans on the board's behalf to request an extension of the board's approval deadline to for Triangle Park and Printers Alley to December 11th. Any further discussion on this? And would anybody care to make the motions?
I'll move that we refer the revised landscape design concepts for Triangle Park and Printers Alley to the Planning Commission and Design Advisory Committee for their review and comment.
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Laura, seconded by Fahad. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'll also move that we request our town manager Kathleen Ramsey to contact V-Trans on the board's behalf to request an extension of the board's approval deadline for Triangle Park and Printers Alley landscape design concepts to December 11th.
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Laura and seconded by Victor. Any further comment, discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and so in both of those, it passed 6-4, 6 in favor of it, 0 against, and 1 absent. And thank you, it's good discussion, and it says good work, it's a good starting point. Let's see where we go.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? About how much time would be allocated for that?
Don't know.
Just curious.
It's important enough, I suppose the answer is the time we need.
Okay. Okay, and that'll be promoted separately as well, like, out to let people know. I mean, I'm assuming Jim will let everyone know by his blog, and I can certainly help push the information out, but, I know that there's been a lot of interest in this idea, and I just wanna make sure people don't just see it as a regular select board meeting, so.
It's a major topic of the board meeting.
Yeah.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you. Excellent.
Nick, before we move on, just to note that David Hallam is here, and perhaps we could move him up on the agenda.
We could do that, David. What we do is, the objection, we're going to move up, jump over 8 right now and go to item number 9. Of course, I have to pull up my own notes on this. The basic subject here is to consider withdrawal of the non-binding term sheet between the Town of Middlebury and Middlebury Electric LLC for the development of a hydroelectric project at Middlebury Upper Falls. Just a little bit of a quick summary on this one. As long as I've been on the board, for 9 years plus, and I know it's been going on longer than that, there's been an ongoing effort to try to develop a hydroelectric facility in downtown Middlebury on the river. I know that every select board member that I've been participating with on this has agreed and been supportive of the idea, and we've all watched a lot of electricity flow over that waterfall every day and think how wonderful it'd be if we could use it. And unfortunately, progress has been rather elusive, to say the least. In February 2015, we signed a non-binding term sheet with an organization known as Middlebury Electric, and the purpose was to support the idea of working to develop a binding agreement for Middlebury Electric to proceed with design and implementation of a generating facility. This term sheet did require obvious progress from Middlebury Electric, and to date, the information we received has been negligible. And so, recognizing that generating technologies are advancing, it's been suggested that we explore additional options. And as such, the suggestion includes terminating this term sheet with Middlebury Electric to clear the pathway for other choices that may emerge. This doesn't mean that we will not continue to be involved if Middlebury Electric does advance their plan, and we certainly hope that's the case. But for now, based on suggestions we've had, it seems that leaving options open is in Middlebury's best interest, so we can make something happen. So, David, do you have any?
I think you summarized it pretty well. There's been a couple entities that have approached Middlebury Electric to see if they could work out an arrangement where they could, it's a developer, a hydroelectric developer, to come in and develop the site, but no agreement has been reached at this point. So I thought it might be in the town's best interest if we made some of these entities aware of the fact that there is a piece of property on the other side of the river, the old David Page Cotton Mill, which used to be a hydromechanical facility. It was never a hydroelectric facility, is a possible alternative. And I felt that it would be best to withdraw from this agreement so we could freely discuss this other opportunity with these other entities. I sent an email to Middlebury Electric a couple weeks ago, letting them know that we were going to do this, and then shortly thereafter informed the other two entities of the site on the other side of the river, and they've shown some interest. They're still gathering information as to whether they would do that. One of the things that I think is important that I just read here is that this agreement basically says that Middlebury Electric will be the sole owner and operator of the project. And that that might be a concern regarding if a developer were to come in and develop Middlebury Electric's site, and because Middlebury Electric may not end up being the owner. So I just think that if we're going to talk to other people, we should withdraw from this agreement. Doesn't mean we can't. I did inform Middlebury Electric that we would still continue to like to work with them if something were to happen. So it's not going to prevent us from working with them in the future.
Well put. No, it gives our options.
Yeah, I mean, it increases our, it seems to me that's the proper public stance to take, isn't it?
Yeah. Other comments? Okay, so if we're in agreement, does anybody have a motion they would like to make?
I'll make a motion to sign the letter confirming the town's intention to withdraw from February 13, 2015, non-binding term sheet with Middlebury Electric LLC for the development of a hydroelectric power project at Middlebury Upper Falls.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Fahad and seconded by Heather. Any other comments? Okay, having none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 6 in favor. Thank you, David.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Who was, Kathleen, for the number 8? Is anybody going to present it? or-
Heather,
Sure.
you want to take it?
It's your show.
Okay. So 8A, the Infrastructure Committee reviewed 3 proposals for asbestos.
Asbestos.
Yeah, whatever.
The hazardous material abatement at the former wastewater treatment plant. I think the original presentation from Dan included that we were to expect a fairly wide range of, depending on who was busy and who had time to do it, and was comfortable with the low bidder, so the Infrastructure Committee was recommended to the Select Board that we award the contract to Catamount Environmental Incorporated for $23,750.
Very good.
Second.
Oh,
That wasn't,
okay.
So that means you moved.
It sounded like a motion to me.
I think I'm supposed to ask if there's any other questions or comments. Is there?
Does anyone have any more questions about it? No?
Okay, all in favor of the motion that Heather made and Laura seconded, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes have it. Thank you. Next.
So 8B, in addition to the asbestos work, we have some electrical work that needs to be done at the former wastewater treatment plant. And this was put out to bid. 2 local contractors submitted pricing. We reviewed that and accepted Dan's recommendation.
Yes.
Accepted Dan's recommendation to award the bid to Newton Electric for $7,387.
So you moved that too, right?
Yes.
And I'm seconding that one
Okay.
too.
Do you want to say where the funding is coming from if you're actually making the motion?
Sure, yes, thank you. So there was some discussion about, how would we pay for those two things, and this money would come out of the lawsuit, right? Kathleen, would you agree? So the pot of money that's been sitting out there waiting for us to decommission the old wastewater treatment plant.
Good.
Good, making progress.
We are slowly inching forward.
Yes.
Excellent. That's nice to see. Okay, with any further questions, all in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and the ayes have it once again.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't, using waste, yes. So, using wastewater treatment settlement funds.
Yes.
Now that I read the motion. 8C is, considering hiring a project manager for doing, some police department energy conservation measures. This would, allow that, planning, construction documents, I think, putting things out to bid, project managing. Harris and Harris have done considerable work for the town. They're familiar with us, they're familiar with the police department. So we went with, Dan and Kathleen's recommendation that we hire them to oversee the project, and I don't remember our discussion about the funds for that.
There is funding for energy improvements in the capital budget.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
Good.
So do you have questions about?
Does anybody have one, but anybody else have anything? Is the intent to put all of the recommendations out as a single bid document, or will they be split?
There are two recommendations, one doing some infill and one floor to ceiling insulation.
Okay,
And I think
It would
the
be-
intention is to do it together and get the prices.
okay.
Oh, do it, but.
It has to be done separately because of the
We'd get separate
timing.
prices, but it would be bid at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is this, this cost that Harris and Harris has, there's not a strict time limit, or?
Right.
So it's through the end of this work?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
good, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I think the price includes all the work necessary to get us to the point that we could hire a contractor to do the work.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does, yes, thanks.
Now, was that a motion or no?
No, I don't think I made a motion that time.
What would you care to?
Sure. I'll make a motion to award the project management contract to Harris and Harris Consulting for implementing energy conservation measures at the Middlebury Police Station for a total cost of $4,875.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Well then, all in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Once again, the ayes have it. Thank you, Heather.
I wasn't totally prepared for that.
Well, we knew you could do it, though, except for Dan's resignation. Hope he's feeling okay. All right, great. So now we jump up to item 10, and this is consider a request from EDF Renewables, which was formerly known as Grow Solar, for letters of support for the development of a 5-megawatt solar project off Halliday Road in Middlebury. As you recall, on October 23rd, October 23rd, it corresponds to Kathleen from Lincoln Landy of EDF Renewables, saw an expression of ongoing support from the town in the form of letters from the Selectboard to Green Mountain Power and the Vermont Department of Public Service for the proposed 5-megawatt solar development project off Halliday Road. As a reminder, we did sign a memorandum of understanding for the project with EDF Renewables at our May 8th meeting. And Lincoln has cited increased scrutiny among state regulators regarding the development of a large-scale community solar projects and the importance of local commitment to these projects as the impetus for his request. Lincoln did send correspondence to Kathleen with talking points, and we looked at them and we requested, Brian and I requested Kathleen to make a few adjustments and to produce this fine document that she has, which essentially continues our support for the project. Trust you've all had a chance to read it. And are there any questions you might have about it? Okay. Does anybody care to make a motion then?
I'll make a motion to sign letters of support to the Vermont Department of Public Service and Vermont Power for the EDF Renewable Solar Project off Halliday Road.
This is yours a second.
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
No, we need it all. We need this project, and we need other scale solar. We need it all. So, and I think it's well cited.
I think so. I think it's been really a good process, and this really achieves many objectives. Okay. And hearing no other comments, questions, all in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item 11 is the approval of submission of a grant application for the update of the local hazard mitigation plan. The action we're going to be requesting is to authorize our town manager Kathleen to sign a 25% match certification letter committing the town to providing a local match to Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, funds made available for updating Middlebury's local hazard mitigation plan. A little background, Stephanie Smith of Vermont Emergency Management reached out to Kathleen in September to determine the town's interest in participating in a statewide grant application to FEMA to obtain funding for individual municipalities so they could hire consultants to update our plan. While Middlebury's plan won't expire until 2021, the timeline associated with federal grants requires significant lead time, and hence the request for the local match commitment in 2018. Stephanie notes that the cost to update the plan typically ranges from $6,000 to $14,000, depending on how the work is contracted. So with FEMA covering 75% of the town's match, or 75%, the town's match would likely run between $1,500 and $3,500. If approved, the expense for the town's 25% match would be included in the fiscal year 20 budget request. Any questions or comments on this request? Anybody care to make a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the 25% match certification letter committing the town to providing a local match estimated to be between $1,500 and $3,500 to FEMA grant funds that may be available for updating Middlebury's local hazard mitigation plan.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Thank you, Victor, for the motion and seconding. Any further discussion?
Do we need to include this in the capital budget? Does that change things?
I was going to put it in the Planning Commission's operating budget.
Okay.
Okay. No further discussion. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And once again, the ayes have it with 6 and 1 absent. Okay, Laura, you requested a discussion on the placement of signs on public property, so.
I thought it would be informing and useful to talk about the policy on the placement of signs on public property because we saw a lot of that.
We did.
And so this came up for me because I had a few people ask why signs were removed. And I said, well, they may have been out of compliance with our policy. So what is our policy? So our policy says that, especially for political signs, that they need to be on your property and not in the public right-of-way. So what is the right-of-way? Well, the right-of-way generally is 25 feet from the center of the line of the road out, which could go onto your private property, but the town has an easement. They call it an easement, so that's called the right-of-way. So usually, like if you see a sidewalk and you see grass on the sidewalk toward the road, that's a place where you shouldn't put a political sign. Like it's safer to put it on the other side of the sidewalk. Sometimes we don't have sidewalks, so it's harder to gauge that. So you do your best as a landowner to put it in the right spot. So this is just a reminder.
Mm-hmm.
We also see very enthusiastic boosters, that like to put out their signs for events like
Safe routes to school.
Safe routes to school, right?
I was
yes.
thinking Vermont teddy bear, but.
Or the book sale, for Ilsley Public Library. We apply for permits for those kinds of signs. So if you're a nonprofit organization and you want to put out your signs in the public right of way, you can do that. You go to the Planning and Zoning Office and you ask for a permit, and they'll talk you through where you can place them and where you can't place them. So we do tell people that no signs are placed on Main Street and Cross Street on the splinter islands, so you're not supposed to put any signs there, and they will be removed. You're never supposed to put signs on utility poles. In fact, it's a federal offense doing that, so you're really not supposed to do that. And if you do get a permit for putting your signs out, you're given a time for taking them down too. So we just encourage you again to remember to observe that. Some people forgot. And it's important to remember that, because the intent of the policy is so that we don't look littered, in our downtown. We want to look good for our residents and our visitors. And we did have a billboard policy to that effect, and our sign policy is really speaking to the spirit of that too. So we want to keep things clear, open, visually beautiful, but still promote the many, many wonderful things that people are up to, our nonprofit organizations and our sport teams and our yard sale creators, all of that. So you can read the policy. It is available at our town website, and I just wanted to review a little bit of that tonight for people, again, since we've just come from that flurry. And if you did have a question about why signs were were removed, or you're not sure about where to put them in the future, just contact the town office, and either Kathleen, our town manager, can respond to that, or our planning and zoning folks can do that.
Okay, thank you. Now, a memo came late this afternoon, is that town council has recommended that the board consider replacing the current sign policy with a formal ordinance regulating signs in the right-of-way. And if this board is agreeable, we may wish to refer the issue to the Policy Review Committee to begin drafting ordinance language for further review. Noted that the committee is in the midst of drafting the employee handbook that the board requested earlier this year, with rollout targeted for January, so it could take up the matter following completion of that effort. Any thoughts?
Do you need a motion for that?
I don't really think we do need a motion for that.
No.
No.
Or just consent?
Just consent?
Okay.
Seems like a reasonable way to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, that said, it is complicated to explain right-of-way, so if we get into ordinance language, it could be a little tricky.
Yes, it could.
Very tricky, actually, and fortunately, the folks up in planning and zoning are very good at responding to the nuances of public right-of-way, so I'm a little cautious about turning policy into ordinance, because I know how complex it is to define right-of-way, but I think we can still work it out.
Wisely thought. Very good. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Okay. Kathleen, our fiscal year 19 year-to-date report, budget
Yeah.
report.
You'll see in your packet the year-to-date budget reports for all of our funds, the general fund, equipment fund, water and sewer funds. Still early in the year, particularly with no real winter weather until today. We're not seeing any trends of concern at this point. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the reports.
I guess I'm concerned about a principle. I mean, the purpose of having an ordinance is the same as...
no, we're onto this one now.
We're off. I'm sorry, I was distracted.
Happy birthday.
Okay, sorry, Kathleen.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Good, well, thank you. Item 14, it's approval of a grant agreement with Vermont Department of Public Safety for the reimbursement of expenses associated with the July 1st, 2017 flood event. The action that's going to be requested is to authorize Kathleen Ramsey as our town manager to sign a standard subrecipient agreement and the related documents with the Department of Public Safety to close out a FEMA grant that funded repairs to the town roads that were damaged by the July 2017 storms, and authorizing the town's local match commitment of $18,072.50. As you can see in your information, our Public Works Operations Director, Bill Kernan, prepared the following summary relative to the request. The roads that were repair costs were incurred were Blake Road, 3 Mile Bridge Road, North Branch, Middle South, and East Munger. And these funds also cover costs estimated by FEMA at $41,699.63 for losses incurred along Creek Road that will need to be repaired at some point in the future. Signing these documents will close out all active FEMA grant events for the town of Middlebury. So the total cost of all repairs, including the estimate for the anticipated repairs to Creek Road, is $72,289.98, of which FEMA has covered 75%, which is $54,217.48. The state has covered 7.5% at $18,072.50, and the 7.5% local match balance is the $18,072.50, which I mentioned earlier. So you have the information in your packet. Are there any questions, any comments? Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the sub-recipient agreement and related documents with the Department of Public Safety to close out the FEMA grant for repairs to town roads damaged by the July 2017 storms, and authorizing the town's local match commitment of $18,072.50.
Second.
Okay, so a motion was made by Heather and seconded by Victor. Any further questions or comment? Then all in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the ayes once again have it. Check warrants.
All right, I would motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $929,655.28, consisting of $736,437.50 for accounts payable and $193,217.78 for payroll for the period of October 23rd, 2018 through November 13, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Laura. Any other questions? All in favor of the check warrants approval signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Kathleen, Town Manager's report.
As requested at your retreat this year, you asked for a quarterly update on the status of our key projects, and that is included in your project, in your packet for your information. I think overall we're on track this point through the year. Happy to answer any questions you have about that.
So where are we with the water system study? I know it was completed, but.
We just, I'm sorry, did you want to
Go ahead.
answer?
Go ahead.
So the Dufresne group came, did I say that right? Came to the infrastructure committee meeting last week, and they gave us a presentation. We had some additional questions for them that we wanted, more information on. They're scheduled to come back to our next meeting in December with that information, and part of that next meeting and agenda will help us evaluate our priority list based on that study.
Okay.
So we were missing some pieces to really make a final recommendation on the priority.
Did you have any ahas from what you saw so far?
No, I was a little surprised by the whole water tank piece. I did not know that was an area that we needed to address. And my question of where she would put that in the priority was in the top 3. And so I think that changed things a little bit for me, and I'm not sure I have enough information right now to really.
What's the matter with the water tank? That it's,
That the state's recommending we don't have enough, storage capacity, that we need an additional,
okay.
I don't remember the figure off the top of my head. But if you evaluate you have to go read the
Okay.
proposal, but
Okay.
if you look at what we need for fire flows and usage, basically, we don't have enough storage capacity in the reservoir on Chipman Hill. We would need additional storage capacity.
Okay. I mean, I've seen, all right, anyway, I don't want to take up time.
So the executive summary and maps included in the report are in the Infrastructure Committee packet
Okay.
for your reference, and I have the full study available in my office for anyone that'd like to take a look at that.
And you're welcome to come to the infrastructure committee, because they are
Talk
coming
about
back
it,
to,
yeah.
talk about that.
When's the next meeting?
December
13th.
Oh, 13th.
13th.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kathleen.
Good, thank you. Okay, that's an interesting,
Basically, she didn't have any major changes to what we had already identified as our priority. But we did have some questions that they hadn't considered, and
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then to note that there will be on November 27th a public hearing on the naming of the park to be constructed adjacent to Printer's Alley at 7:15 to take community input on a petition suggestion to name the park Lazarus Park.
very good.
And comments have been flowing in.
Are they? What are they saying?
I have 4 in favor and 1 opposed to naming a public park after someone.
Oh, just general thing
Yeah,
like
just a
that?
general.
My idea, again, and it kind of relates back to what BMP was trying to tell us, is like, does the name include something that tells us what the function of that park is? So it's not just simply Lazarus Park, but if it's an information center, for example, is it Lazarus Information Park or something like that, like so, or Welcome Hub, is it Lazarus Welcome Hub or something that, because we did talk about that in early public hearings, that would be the place where you would go for like an information kiosk, something.
Maybe like a storyboard about St. Lazarus in the park itself.
Well, there could be that too, definitely a hope for some historical marker.
Well, I mean, we're naming, I suppose the proposal for naming it is to recognize a person who's contributed a great deal to this community and to honor that person, honor his memory. And as far as how it may be used, if it becomes a location for a kiosk or something else like that, I mean, but I mean, I don't think that when you're honoring someone, you also have to have a town function identified with that.
Right, you may not, but it's just something that.
Well, I think it's silly. I mean, we have a library and we name it after someone who, perhaps because, in the case of the college library, because he was very rich and donated money. But I don't see that, I mean, it seems to me that in this instance, it's a matter of honoring someone who contributed a great deal to the community. And you would have a historical marker simply to tell people who Stan Lazarus was. And I see that as a way of remembering our history, and something which I think we need to do. But to make it, to give it, to have a function as somehow giving credibility or I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, if people feel, I suppose there are some people who are of the opinion that we should not name public spaces after anyone. And and then they have their reasons, and I don't dispute them having them. And on the other hand, some may object because they don't think the person warrants it. So I mean, I think you know, there are various reasons why someone would want, or someone would like to speak in its favor because they remember the person and they think the person warrants being remembered historically.
Yeah, I don't want to labor it, you know, like,
Well-
I mean, I just put it through a
I
filter.
think I kind of hear what you're saying, and that
No.
is,
I'm fine with Lazarus Park and the
Well-
simplicity, I like simplicity too,
Yeah.
you know, like, and I support the intent, you know, I just didn't know if there was a simple adjective that would also honor him, but also mark the function of the park.
park
you know.
as a, you know, as a sort of a recreation park versus a ballpark, maybe is what it is. But anyway, obviously good points for discussion. What it does come down to is just a reminder that on November 27th at 7:15, there will be a public hearing on this subject.
Okay,
So how about Lazarus Triangle?
I think that's for a public hearing.
The-
right?
That's for the.
I hear cricket.
Bring your
pub-
suggestion
Bring
to the public hearing.
That's right.
okay.
Lazarus
Chewing,
Triangle.
chewing.
That's right. And rugby field. Okay, thank you. Board member concerns. Lindsay, you have any?
Oh, I just wanted to say how lovely it was voting here again.
Yes.
After living in Massachusetts and Georgia, where it's very much harder to vote, and it takes a lot longer, and it's always lovely. It's like going to the DMV here. It's actually pleasant. So, and just a thank you to A, the town clerk's office, and B, all the volunteers who came, including Nick. I saw him there on the day, so, yeah. That's it.
Victor, Fahad.
Kathleen,
Yes.
I think when I first got on the board, we had a discussion about organizing a possible tour of all the facilities.
yeah.
And I don't think we followed up on that. And since I still don't know a lot of facilities that the town has, and Lindsay is new, I think it'd be a good idea to.
Great.
Because sometimes you talk about some infrastructure.
Wastewater treatment
And I
plant?
don't, yeah, I'm thinking it's somewhere down the alley somewhere, but I don't know where it is. So I think.
You won't be disappointed when you get there.
But I want to know how to get there.
Sure.
So it'd be good to have that, I think.
Good.
I agree.
Mhm.
I'm good, thank you.
I want to talk about fallen, two things. So trees that will be falling, and they're the black walnut trees that are next to the marquee and near our library. So there are very old black walnut trees that are going to come down because they need to come down. And someone was very upset about that, and we clarified for them that they really needed to come down. But that said, I don't know if we realize the value that those trees have had in shading the library all these years, because they're enormous, and that with these hotter summers we're having, it's just something to think about, like, and it reminded me again of the value of trees in our urban center, and that it's really important to replace trees when we can. And I hope that that's the intent with these trees, that we'll somehow replace the value of these trees somewhere else, if not there, somewhere else in the downtown. So I think that's part of our tree policy, and I don't know if Vermont Gas, who's, I think, financing the removal of these particular trees, will be helping us replace those trees, but that's another idea of a contribution that they could make, is helping us replace those trees. So I just wanted to note that. as something that's valuable and important.
So why are they being removed? You said they have to be removed. Why?
Well, I think that Vermont Gas is putting a line through there,
Okay.
and that kind of just pointed to, again, what are we going to do with those trees? Because they're also very close to the wall of the Marquee Theater, and the root bases, of course, we know what a root base does to a building. So they're overgrown there, and they need to be addressed. I also don't know what happens with the wood, because it's valuable wood, so I wonder about that, like when trees like that are removed from town property, like what happens to that wood? Are we getting any value or benefit from the removed wood?
Black walnut certainly has good value.
So I would want to see that too, like that we're getting the value of the wood that's removed and that those trees are replaced and we get the value of having them replaced. So I think that's really important. And so that was one thing. And then, speaking of the Marquee, I went to the movie Fallen, which is about police officers that have been killed in the line of duty nationally. And I was really, again, struck by the important work that police officers do and how fortunate Middlebury is to have very qualified police officers that know how to do that important social work that we require of our police officers. And they spoke to that in this film, and I was really impressed. They talked about, nationally, like over 2,000 police officers are killed. And when you think about that compared to the statistics of our military that are killed overseas, it's a lot, So they actually commemorate that every May 15th with a peace officers Memorial Day. Peace officers, and I love that they refer to police officers as peace officers, because that's truly the work that they're doing for us. And that's truly the work that our police officers are doing for us in Middlebury. And that we're just fortunate, that we have such a scrupulous selection process that Chief Hanley goes through in hiring, and it pays off for us. So I just wanted to note that.
Good. Thank you. And well put, Lindsay. It was a lot of credit goes to Ann and the staff and everyone who helped. Personally, I find it one of the great social events to be at.
It's nice.
I love the job of seeing people come through. It's when they come through at a rapid pace and I forget their names, it's always an issue, but that's my own personal problem. But thank you for the great work, and it was great to see the level of participation that our citizens engaged in. This is an unusual month. Usually we have 2 meetings before Thanksgiving, but we don't this year. So we're getting one before, one after, so for every one of us here and everyone out there, and want to wish, from all of us, want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, make it a safe one, an enjoyable one, and we look forward to seeing us all back here on November 27th at our next meeting. But in the meantime, we have an executive session, so would somebody like to take us into that?
I'll take us in. So in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contracts in public.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, number 2.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss contracts and under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so it looks like it's at 8:39, 8:40. We're going into executive session.